Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. It's a big day today. All eyes will be on the Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley because he's going to present the budget 2016-17. This is going to be the Modi government's third budget, but Arun Jaitley's second full budget. We'll get you all the details in just a bit, but first, a look at the headlines. All eyes on Union Budget and on Union Finance Minister Arun Jaitley to present Modi government's second full budget later today. Enough indications to suggest that the Union Budget for 2016-17 will primarily focus on stimulating growth. Government is expected to unveil a roadmap for big-ticket disinvestment. There might be some good news for employees in Budget 2016-17. Income tax slab likely to be raised from 2.5 lakhs to 3 lakh rupees. Defence sector also likely to get a boost in this budget. Defence budget likely to see a modest hike of 9% to 2.68 lakh crore rupees. Pension bill alone may go up to over 80,000 crore rupees. Like defence, education sector hoping for some relief from the budget. Budget likely to give a major boost to Prime Minister Modi's pet project, Make in India. Well, boosting public expenditure is one of the toughest challenges facing Finance Minister Arun Jaitley this year. Last year, he provided 2.4 lakh crore rupees for capital expenditure, but the defence sector took away nearly 38%. Here's more.
At a time when the government needs to urgently kickstart the investment cycle, the finance minister finds himself in a bind. In the last budget, Arun Jaitley increased capital expenditure by 27% over revised estimates for 2014 and 15. It was almost 1.7% of GDP. Economists now suggest increasing the public sector capital expenditure to 3%, something that was last seen in 2004 and 5.
If you have that kind of an investment in the economy, then you will see that a lot of the infrastructure related deficit that we are still grappling with will start getting addressed.
But that in itself is a huge challenge at a time when Jaitley has to provide over 1 lakh crore rupees to implement the 7th Pay Commission's award and the One Rank One pension scheme for armed forces. Besides that, government's non-tax receipts are also expected to fall short of budget estimates. Realization from disinvestment is expected to be around 25,000 crore against a target of 69,000 crore rupees. Due to weak economic growth, direct tax collection is expected to be lower than budget targets. Although the government is hopeful of achieving revenue collections due to rise in indirect tax collections, above all, Jaitley has to deal restricting fiscal deficit to 3.9% of the GDP.
I think it's very important for the government to increase the public expenditure even at the cost of relaxing the FRBM target. And we have not achieved till now, not in a single year we have achieved the FRBM target since 2003. But I don't really understand why we are sticking to this number.
Lack of private investment and subdued business sentiment make it imperative for the government to sustain the growth rate of over 7%.
Now, if that requires relaxation of the deficit, what I mean is if the government has to borrow to invest, it could be a worthwhile option to look at.
Global economic slowdown and 2 back-to-back monsoon failures have complicated the finance minister's task. The ray of hope, however, is the telecom spectrum auction next year. Spectrum auction proceeds and lower oil subsidy bill is expected to help the government to increase public expenditure in coming years. Krishnanand Tripaঠি's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me for a chat this morning on this crucial day is senior journalist Yatish Rajawat. Very good morning. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Hi, Frank. Good morning.
You know, as far as the budget is concerned, is it going to be a populist budget? What is it that we can expect from this budget?
You know, the finance minister this year does not have too much of an elbow room. He cannot reduce, if you want a populist budget, you know, from a common citizen's point of view, they would like, you know, the income tax exemption limit to increase. They would like general deduction to increase. They would like, higher compensation for school fees, for transportation, for medical expenses, and so on and so forth. The challenge is that this year, Jaitley is not in a position to give all these things. He is already committed to bringing down the corporate taxation from 30% to 25% over a 5-year period. So he might bring that down by 1% or something to just tell the people that tell the corporate that we are on that path. The way that this budget can be populist is if he decides to stimulate growth. If he decides that I'm going to let go of the fiscal deficit commitment for a moment, not completely let go in that extreme sense, but I'm going to use government expenditure to drive capital expenditure into the economy. Because we've seen over the last 2 years that the corporate sector has been unwilling, unable, and has not invested has not done any investments. It's partly a result, they're now calling it two balance sheet deficits. The deficit in the public sector banks because of NPS and the high debt overhang in these large top 10 corporates in the country, combined with a capacity overfill that is not, achieving its full demand, so to say. In this situation, who is it that will drive the economy? So if it is a populist budget, and the definition of the populist budget should be that economic growth should be driven.
Yes.
And that can only come from investment from the government.
Indeed. Investment from the government is one aspect of it. But something interesting is what Prime Minister Modi said a few months ago. He said that, when SOPs are doled out to the common man, you call it subsidies and you give it terms like that. But when the same thing is doled out to corporates, you give it a different name. So can we see Arun Jaitley taking cue from that and probably being a little harsher on the corporates this time around?
I don't see him going harsh on the corporates because there is no, there's no reason to be one. Second, there is not much of harshness that will have an impact on it. The revenue collection from corporate taxation is already down. They will not meet the targets on it. The only way that he will meet the revenue targets is through indirect taxation, which is also going to come from the petrol excise tax collections. So he can't be too harsh on that. Can he give more to the poor? Now that's the big question. And much more important question there is, how does he give it?
Yes.
The how has become more important than what. So there is almost a complete acceptance of the fact, with the fact that for the last 2 years agriculture has not performed. Large part of the country, the farmers are suffering. We don't see don't see a sunshine or a rain, possible favorable rainfall going ahead. So he'll have to do something. How he does it, what mechanism he adopts, because we've seen in the Jan Aadhaar, the 3 schemes that he launched, which included the Mudra Bank and the Jan Aadhaar, they have not actually been able to reach out to the population that they were intended for.
Yes.
So while accounts has been opened, how much transaction has happened in terms of disbursement of loans to people who opened those accounts? The economic survey was slightly silent on that aspect of it, but my assumption is that those accounts have been used to deposit money or to transact a few between the bank and the individual, but it has not been used for disbursing small loans to these individuals.
Indeed. Indeed.
That if he does, and he finds a mechanism and a system to do that, that will have a much bigger impact than any past Manregas of the world.
Indeed. All right. Stay with us, Yatish. I'm going to come back to you ahead on the program as well to discuss some of these key aspects that we are taking forward as well. Let's now move on and focus on some core sectors. In fact, the budget last year gave a lot of hope, especially to the skill training sector. It gave hopes of honing skills required by the industry, but experts feel that the Skill India mission needs more money and proper certification process for the youth. As per the latest data released in the economic survey, the enrollment in the government's flagship program, the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, is less than half of the target for this financial year. Here's a report.
The Modi government is banking on large-scale skilling of Indian youth to revive the manufacturing sector. Skilling is also important for the success of other flagship programs like Make in India, Stand Up India and Start Up India. According to the National Sample Survey, over 11 crore workers that will enter the labour market in the next 6 years need to be trained.
Government should motivate industry, academia and training institution to come together and motivate some of the universities to get into skill development. On one hand, there should be SSC certification, Sector Skill Council certification, which is industry recognized. On the other hand, academic certification, which is university accredited. And that would help a lot of students who are currently, this is not aspirational, but probably this will help to become aspirational.
By 2022, nearly 30 crore people in the existing workforce will be required to learn new skills. The government has set an ambitious target of enrolling 24 lakh youth under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana in this financial year. However, as per the latest data, the number of beneficiaries stand at little over 11.5 lakhs. Under the scheme, skill centers would impart 200 hours of fresh training and 80 hours training for upgradation of earlier skills.
60% of the jobs which are available earlier are no longer available today. So there are new skill sets which are required. So Uber and Ola are the clear examples as to what is happening. The IT industry is losing jobs. But what will the IT industry do? The IT industry will, some people could get involved in robotics, some people could. So these are the new areas which are coming in. So you have to keep shifting. The job shift will continue to happen.
The government allocated over 1,500 crore rupees to the Ministry of Skill Development in the last budget. But importing skills to India's 450 million strong workforce is a daunting task. According to the government's own estimates, less than 5% Indians have some sort of formal training. The figure of skilled workforce is over 50% in the United States of America, 80% in Japan and 96% in South Korea. Anshu J. Singh's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Nitish, we've seen that, several sectors have been complaining that the funds that have been allocated to them is not enough. But then there are several pet projects of the Prime Minister, several schemes that have been given a lot of funds, but those funds remain unutilized. So are we going to see something, on that front?
So, Frank, it reminds me of a situation. Has anybody ever complained of getting more than he deserved?
Definitely not.
So, people will always complain about paucity of funds or the fact that, enough has not been allocated. But more important question that you asked was the underutilization and the impact of these funds. The last allocation, and if we come to the skill development part, the last allocation was around 1,500 crores. And even before that, there was an allocation, if I remember, by the previous government, which was almost close to 2,000 odd crores. These funds, as they were utilized by the skill ministry, was basically, given away as largest to companies in return for the fact saying that, X number of people have been skilled. The flaw in the scheme was that there was no guaranteed job, which was the promise made by these companies. So these people, whether they got the skills which were deserving enough for them to get jobs, we don't know. All that 3,500 odd crore has been basically wasted, in my opinion. I mean, it's a strong opinion, but I feel that the way the scheme was structured. Now, in the new scheme of things, which, the Skill India thing, they wanted to relook at it. Basically, how to skill it and how will these people finally be deployed in organizations or companies, where will they get the job? So now it becomes very important for the finance minister, because it is about jobs, and jobs in a sense is a reflection of the growth, or it's a circle of it's a virtuous circle. So if he's able to allocate enough and to the right scheme, I think we might have a better impact in certain industries. Now, there's another assumption that, a myth rather, which we need to break. These jobs are not for manufacturing. Manufacturing as it exists today has already moved into the manufacturing 4.0, where there's higher automation. But which is the biggest employment generator for every dollar invested? It is tourism. For every dollar invested in manufacturing, you get a multiple of 8. For every dollar invested in tourism, you get a multiple of 18. So this reskilling, this skill development has to focus on tourism at the moment.
Indeed. All right. On that note, we'll slip into a short break here on the program. But on the other side, we'll continue focusing on some of those key sectors and some of those key focus areas. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
NDA government's third budget. Will it be a path-breaking one? Will it fuel the government's development thrust? Watch the brightest minds dissect budget proposals. 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. on February 29th on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways is pushing the Finance Ministry to increase the ministry's allocation to achieve the target of 30 kilometers of road per day. In the upcoming budget, the ministry has asked to raise allocations by 15 to 20,000 crores. Here's a report.
Rural roads will be a key thrust area for the Modi government infrastructure push. Aiming to boost job growth, the government wants to give it the highest priority in budget 2016-17. The Transport Ministry has asked for a higher financial allocation in the upcoming union budget.
First of all, I will give my plan. My budget is 45,000 crores. Probably for this budget, it may be increased by 15,000 to 20,000 crores, I'm expecting.
The government claims it's laying 18 kilometers of roads per day. It aims to take it up to 30 kilometers, for which it needs additional allocation. Last year's budget allotted 42,913 crore to roads and highways, which could go up to 57,913 crores if Gadkari's proposal is accepted. But experts doubt if additional funds will help achieve targets. For one, the National Highway Authority of India, that will play a key role in helping the government, has no less than 112 legal disputes with infrastructure companies valued at over 25,000 crore rupees.
The projects which are stalled, they required funds infusion. So that fund which will be earmarked extra will go to the stalled projects. Number two, the number of projects to be awarded this year are more than the previous year. As per the planning, it will be around 7,000 plus kilometers which have to be awarded, for which the expenditure has to be more. Beside that, completing the previous project will be also a challenge, for which more funds are required.
The ministry has also requested for 250 crore for cashless insurance for road accident victims. Rajkamal Rao's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Yatish, what the Transport Minister has been talking about, he's saying he wants to take road building capacity from 18 kilometers per day to 30 kilometers per day, and for that he needs funds. And the government has been emphasizing a lot on rural connectivity. Is that something that is achievable?
So the achievable part is certainly that, per kilometer road building capacity can certainly be increased. But there is a challenge there, till now, most of the building, at least in the last 7 years or so, a large part of these road projects were given to private companies. These private companies quoted, what can I say, strange norms for building these roads. As a result of this, most of them could not build them. Most of these projects have gone into legal disputes. Some of these companies have become NPAs because of the amount of funding that they raised for these road projects. They are unable to execute them now. So if the corporate sector or the private sector cannot execute these projects, now it falls on the government. So again, we're seeing this back to the government kind of a push. So, if, private sector is failing us in some sense of the word across sectors. Now, if Gadkari then asks that I need a higher allocation because I want to fulfill this, yes, you should get that higher allocation, but does the NHAI has the capacity to fulfill those projects? Does it has the project execution capability for taking on all these projects? They will still need contractors. Now, what has happened over the last 2 years? Most of these contractors have also gone bankrupt because of the fact that they were subcontractors to private companies. So banks are not willing to lend them any money. So Gadkari has been working very aggressively with banks to make a lot of these contractors solvent again. So that, this target that he sets of 18 kilometers, I don't know whether they've been able to meet the target, because the 18-kilometer target was set last year by him. And I think that last review they had said that they have reached around 12 to 14 kilometers.
Yes.
Now he wants to jump from that to 30 kilometers. It's not just about the money. It's also about the execution capacity that NHAI has. And it's about that supporting ecosystem of contractors who are insolvent at the moment.
Indeed. All right. Let's move on to another very crucial sector now, that is the defense sector. And let's look at the defense sector because, the defense sector is such a sector that is facing a major imports bill crisis. And, it's faced with a huge imports bill. The government is, of course, expected to lay critical emphasis on its Make in India endeavor in this sector. Let's take a look at this report.
The world's third largest standing army with 1 million active personnel is investing in the latest weapons. From 2010 to 2014, all that modernization has made India the world's biggest arms importer. The government wants to get rid of the tag by increasing indigenous production, which is why industry experts see a significant hike in capital expenditure in the offing.
With Make in India announcement, what started happening is all the programs which the government today is taking a decision, decisions are being made in favor of Indian private industry. We certainly see an increase on defense budget on an average. If we look at the long-term trends, defense budgets do grow about 10 to 12% every year.
Historically, India has been importing up to 70 to 80% defense hardware from abroad. In the latest 2.5 years, the import component has come down to 60%. Which in the next 5 years, the government wants to bring down to 50%. The government is planning a capital expenditure of over 1 lakh crore rupee this year, with a significant part of the orders expected to be executed by public and private sector companies. But despite the heavy investment, experts feel indigenous production of defense hardware are still a long way away.
It's unlikely to happen in a very short term. That's going to happen over a medium to long term. Because even if you start setting up manufacturing processes for making the defense equipment, it'll take a while. But yes, what it will do is that a large part of money that under the defense expenditure used to be spent on acquiring foreign, equipments. Now that money will be spent on acquiring, equipments which are manufactured within the country.
India's average annual defense budget of $30 billion is almost 1/3 that of China. Between 2009 to 2014, India imported 100,000 crore rupee in military hardware, nearly 40 times more than its exports. Achieving a sizable cut in this figure is one important expectation from the upcoming budget. Palak Sharma's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Yatish, the defense sector is a very crucial sector for India, and the Prime Minister himself has been emphasizing about Make in India in defense. What can we expect from this budget for the defense sector?
I don't think so. The defense sector can actually ask for a higher allocation, because some of the capital expenditure that was allocated to them for last year has not been fully utilized. And one of the reasons is Make in India, in a very ironic manner, because of this emphasis on Make in India, they cannot place contracts to foreign bidders. Therefore, they first need to utilize the existing capital expenditure. The other challenge to them is that some of the operating expenditure, which is basically used for procuring equipments, ammunitions, and that is also supposed to be placed to foreign bidders. They've not been able to utilize that fully. You remember a couple of years back, there was an army chief who wrote back to the Prime Minister saying that, we currently have stocks only for 20 days.
Yes.
That situation has not changed till date. So, both on the capital expenditure side and the operating expenditure side, the forces have not been able to fully deploy, fully exhaust their budgets. Now, the new defense minister had laid down a policy for bidding, which is different from the earlier policy in a lot of manner, which was, when I went through that policy and it was gigantic, The whole bidding process, the document was something like 300 odd pages. So I don't know how any bidder could get through, and so so none of the contracts got awarded in the last 4 or 5 years that Anthony was the defense minister. But hopefully, with the comfort that the current Prime Minister has in Parrikar, we will see some large orders being placed in the coming year. Now, if they are placed and a drawdown is made available to the defense forces, because there will not be drawdowns in the immediate year.
Indeed.
Those payments will be linked through the deliveries, which will happen over the next 3 to 5 years. So that's the situation at the moment.
Indeed.
Till such time they utilize it, there's no point kind of allocating higher.
All right, Yatish Rajawat, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much for putting things into perspective for us, and it was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you, Frank.
Well, after facing a huge funds cut last year, educationists are hoping for some relief in the upcoming budget. Experts feel that after 2 years in power, the government should now address pending issues in education, including training and recruiting qualified teachers. Here's a report.
Universal education for students up to 18 years, more financial transparency in Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan are two key expectations from the upcoming union budget. Educationists are seeking increased budgetary allocation to meet Right to Education Act requirements.
They have to expand this RT from pre-primary to higher secondary education. और 18 साल तक के बच्चों को शिक्षा के दायरे में इनको लाना होगा और RT को ही एक्सपेंड करना, क्योंकि RT के अलावा और हमारे पास कोई जरिया नहीं है जिसमें विद इन टाइम फ्रेम हम अपने स्कूल्स को और इनरोलमेंट्स को और रिटेंशन को कायम कर सकें.
Other focus areas remain the poor teaching quality, access and innovation. Last year, the government brought in initiatives like the School Assessment Program and the Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya New Teachers Training Program to address shortage of quality teachers in both rural and urban areas. Despite them, the nation still needs 9.4 lakh new teachers.
We need to relook at how we are training our teachers, the teacher educator programs. So it starts from there. It starts from using innovative teaching learning material perhaps, right? It also looks at how we should be interweaving our ICT resources sensibly, judiciously, and not because it's fashionable to do so or because schools have that facility. It comes down to how do we do our assessments. So it's a kind of a cyclic process.
Another worrying feature for the government is the poor educational outcomes. Only 48% of Class 5 students can read a Class 2 text, while 37% government primary schools do not comply with 30:1 pupil-teacher ratio. 60 lakh children are still out of school.
Building a school and enrolling children into school is not the end in itself. Ensuring that children get an education is the main objective. And I think on that, the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan failed miserably. And that's a fairly complicated narrative, as you know, because the right to education also was enacted in 2010.
Well, we'll have to come out of that report now because the Minister of State Finance, Jayant Sinha, is addressing the media. Let's listen to what he has to say.
बजट में हम लोगों को कई सारे मुद्दे जो हैं उनको संभालने पड़ते हैं, तो मैं बजट की तुलना किसी और बजट से नहीं करूंगा. वो 11 बजे जब पेश होगा बजट तो आपको पता चल जाएगा कि इस बजट में हम लोगों ने क्या किया.
बजट से बाहर रह के सरकार से उम्मीदें लगाए बैठते थे.
वो तो आपके वो बजट जब पेश हो जाएगा तो उसके बाद हम लोग समिंग अप करेंगे. अभी हम लोग सिर्फ बता सकते हैं आप लोगों को कि हम लोगों ने सबकी बातें सुनी हैं, सबका हम लोगों ने सलाह सलाह लिया है और बहुत मेहनत की है और अब 11 बजे जब बजट पेश होगा तो सब चीज़ों का नतीजा
ग्लोबल सिचुएशन के समय कितनी बड़ी चुनौती है इस वक्त?
नहीं, चुनौतियाँ तो बहुत हैं, आप सब लोगों को मालूम है कि क्या क्या चुनौतियाँ हैं और हमारी कोशिश रही है कि इन सब चुनौतियों को संभालते हुए देश की जनता के लिए जितना कुछ हम लोग कर सकते हैं हम लोग करेंगे। धन्यवाद
सर। पूरे देश सर
Finance there addressing the media ahead of the budget 2016-17. On that note, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of the Breakfast News, but do stay tuned for our continuous coverage on the budget leading up to the budget and after the budget as well, right here on Rajya Sabha Television.